This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Tonight, it's Roger Stone in the zone and on the phone. We're going to be taking your calls live at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. Or you can email us your questions at askstone at stonezone.com. Askstone at stonezone.com. But first, I want to talk to you about a case that should disturb every parent in New York, if not across the country. Mark Fishman, a Bronx father of four, has been sentenced to 45 days in jail following a ruling in Westchester County, New York Supreme Court, and after a contentious trial hearing. Now, Mark Fishman is a gentleman who lives with traumatic brain injury, tinnitus, related hearing impairment, cognitive occipital neuralgia, and post-concussion memory loss from multiple car accidents. Mark Fishman says that the Westchester County courts, the Westchester County New York District Attorney, and New York State Attorney General Letitia James are treating him unfairly. His sentencing comes nearly a decade after an incident in which police arrested Mr. Fishman during a court-ordered bi-monthly supervised visitation with his children on December 15th, 2018. A visit fully prepaid and supported by a 22-page visitation order granting him access to his autistic son from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. A court-approved supervisor and disability aide were both present, and the supervisor had confirmed the visitation in writing earlier that very day. Now, in withheld police video and audio, which was only obtained by Mr. Fishman through his federal lawsuit against those who are oppressing him, the now terminated arresting officer in this case, one Lane Schlesinger, is heard telling Mr. Fishman's disability aide that Mr. Fishman had no intent to commit any crime. Nonetheless, Mark Fishman was arrested at 11:35 a.m. during his prepaid supervised visit with his son on allegations tied to an unserved order of protection. Neither the jury nor his defense team was ever shown the exculpatory evidence. Then, on July 16, 2020, after years of legal battles, a federal appeals court ordered the transcription as an ADA accommodation in his case, yet Judge David Zuckerman has refused to grant a retrial despite knowing that Mr. Fishman could not fully participate in his own defense. Joining us now is the father in question, Mark Fishman. I know that you have to likely submit to incarceration here very shortly. I'm glad that you could join us to tell this horrific story to our audience here in the Stone Zone. Welcome into the zone.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving the time to talk about a subject which is taboo, disability discrimination, not accommodating, those who have disabilities, especially invisible disabilities, like hearing impairment from tinnitus or brain injury from traumatic car accident, or PTSD or other mental impairments. Society marginalizes us, labels us, belittles us. And unfortunately, many judges have no empathy, no patience, don't accommodate us. And, we're forced to go to federal court and spend years in litigation just to try to get the American with Disabilities Act and Rehabilitation Act enforced to protect many of us.
I saw you on the Sal Greco show on Rumble. You were terrific, and it really moved me to talk about your case here on the show and also to post information on my various social media platforms. I really feel for you as a father. This is a horrific tale, But why has your alleged misdemeanor over a child custody visitation turned into a 7+ year legal battle, which has to have cost you a fortune?
Well, Roger, when David faces Goliath, Goliath, which is the New York court system, and the Westchester judges have enormous resources. To answer your question and try to be as brief as possible, after I was convicted in a trial of attempting to violate an order of protection I never received, and actually violating an order of protection I never received for not going on a property, to return to court for the DA to argue that my kids should have a lifetime order of protection. I wasn't charged or prosecuted with violating any of my kids, my 4 kids, Joanna, Jonah, Aiden, and Sky. Yet the DA, tried, not once, not twice, but over 9 appearances, Roger, in the next year and a half to just say, okay, we got to get orders of protection. A judge saying, I have no authority. You didn't prosecute me and charge him for that. And the DA then saying, you have to, and making me out to be someone I'm not, and constantly, wailing on false allegations, unfounded charges, things like, oh, you committed child abuse. That's the irony here. I was accused of committing child abuse in 2014 after I had my injury, after I had surgery. And it was so absurd, Roger, that someone like my ex-wife would go to a member of the government and say, oh, my ex-husband attempted to strangle the kids when he picked them up from the gym. Roger, any medical doctor can tell you that, I have cubital tunnel syndrome. I had just had ulnar release. That's nerve release in your arm. You can't squeeze your fingers. You can't hold a key. How do you strangle anybody? Obviously, the video evidence cleared me. Picked up my kids at the gym. They were roughhousing. They were 2 twins. They're 4 years old. What's that have to do with me? And unfounded, like 4.5, 5 weeks later. You had a family court judge, Michelle Shower, says, oh, I believe you committed the abuse. Oh, can we bring in, Child Protective Services or ACS testify? No, I think you did it. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter in my courtroom. You're guilty. Why am I guilty? Because I sued you in federal court. You denied me accommodations. Yeah, that's what this is all about, Roger. And you asked. So it's very simplistic. Attorney General Letitia James defended Judge Shower and her court attorney, Brent D'Ambrosio, as well as Judge Oliver Gordon, as well as Judges Horowitz and others, who all denied real-time transcription, denied my note-taker, denied an aide to help me take notes. I can't take my own notes. I have cubital tunnel syndrome. I can't hold a pen. Okay? Denied in the courtroom. They said, you didn't prove you were disabled. No, my doctors did. And the specialists, they did. So how can Letitia James investigate the cop, Lane Schlesinger, who's charged in misconduct, while she is representing the judges in my federal lawsuit, where the judges were ordered to give the accommodation they refused? You can't be impartial. You're not going to state the full investigation. So it's no surprise, Roger, that in the law enforcement misconduct report on Lane Schlesinger, the only cop in Westchester to be labeled pattern misconduct, then my case is intentionally omitted, because then Letitia James would lose monetary damages and worse in my federal case against the judges and the court staff that denied accommodations. There's no fairness. There's just cover-up and civil rights violations and no rights for those with disabilities.
Yeah, they're all in it together. That is the problem in the nutshell. They're all part of the same corrupted one-party system, and they're all covering each other's misdeeds. I want to focus for a minute on the arresting officer in your case, because this seems like a real piece of work. You're talking about an individual who had over 40 verified civilian complaints against them. This is Lane Schlesinger, I believe. Why is this person still serving the public? Why are they still in any position? This is someone who should have been suspended long before they ended up railroading you.
Well, they didn't suspend or to terminate him until the Letitia James report came out, because they wanted to try and win their federal lawsuit. They didn't want to supply this in court-ordered discovery. The cops were shocked that someone who was convicted for not committing a crime, for an order of protection where I wasn't given the third page, neither was the jury, which says party not served. The jury's just given order of protection saying, oh, he was served. I never got a copy of this. So to answer your question, the New Rochelle mayor, Noam Branson, purposely withheld this, along with their attorneys, Lee Lumba, okay, and several of the other cohorts in New Rochelle, to deceive and mislead a judge during discovery that their police were like Cinderella and the Prince in some fairy tale when they pattern disability discriminating cops. He was terminated in 2014. About August 2014 was his last paycheck. About 3-4 months, Roger, after the law enforcement report was given to him, not given to the public till later on that year in December 14. So, December 2024, pardon me. December 2024. Terminated in August 2024.
I myself have been the target of a weaponized judiciary. I know that your legal expenses in a 7-year legal battle, these things are usually resolved in 6 months, have to be enormous. And I know that your supporters have set up a GoFundMe page. How can people help you out in this epic struggle?
Oh, really appreciate it. Legal fees, transcript costs, investigators and ADA expenses are huge. They can go to New Rochelle policeabuse.com. Again, that's New Rochelle policeabuse.com. Go down to how they can help and click on the GoFundMe, make a donation. It's very appreciative. And, that doesn't just help our fight, it helps everyone else that Lane/Year who spent 17 years, on the force, help reverse their convictions. Because that's the amazing thing here, Roger. So there's no provision in this law enforcement misconduct law. It's 33 dirty cops labeled. 33 by the shame. Yet there's no requirement that any of the convictions that the cops participate in be reversed. How could that be? How could that be? Our DA Cachese, and previous DA Miriam Roca, and DA Scarpino, there's no obligation that they have to accept the Attorney General report. They don't have to review. They don't have to look at anything. They've refused to comment in my case over years, since 2023, that even their videos existed that they had to give on the Cleese discovery law. They don't want to because, again, you'd be taking down the Westchester DA. We're talking about a 17-year cop and his supervisor. Let's not forget about Officer Sean Kane, caught on police best video planting drugs on Ivan Harper. Okay, and June 24, he's suspended. But what he was the supervisor who signed my report. He signed that the arrest was authenticated. He signed that there were no police audio video. He signed that it's unknown if the supervisor was present. Yet on the police cameras, my supervisor, Ann Elliott, who's a Republican, the cop says 9 times calls her supervisor in the police precinct, but on his arrest report he says unknown. Well, he put down that the supervisor was present, Roger. He didn't do the arrest because the only person who can cause arrest to be made during supervised visitation, which is probation in New York State, okay, probation for going to see your own kid, right, is the supervisor. So, of course, they said, unknown, she's a supervisor. And why'd you call supervisor, 9 times in 2.5 hours? These are the corrupt things. The cops don't give us the audio and video. The cops don't give disabled people the disciplinary reports. They just want convictions. The DAs just want convictions, and they elevate, the ADAs like Joyce Miller here, who was smiling with a smirk during my sentencing. 4.5-hour sentencing. You get 45 days. 4.5 hours? For what? They describe all lies. No truth, no backup. They go on and on and on. Like you're saying, it's persecution. This isn't prosecution. It's personal. It's personal. Why? Oh, who's the DA? Judge Cachese, 26-year judge in Westchester. Did she have police officers last year and Kane testify in a courtroom? Absolutely. Who's going to review all those convictions, Your Honor, that you were involved in? Why don't you recuse? File papers to remove them. No, they don't remove them. They never do. Corruption at its highest.
They never do. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Mark Fishman because I want him to tell you one more time how you can help him in this epic struggle. You're listening to The Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be right back.
This Sunday is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run, and our team is in need of your support. Right now, every dollar counts. The WABC hosts must all rally their loyal audience to participate. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk and help your favorite hosts right here at WABC and support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk. Help WABC raise money for the amazing Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. Tonight, it's Roger Stone in the zone and on the phone as we take your calls at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. You can also email us your questions at askstone@stonezone.com. We're talking now to Mark Fisherman. Mark Fisherman is a Bronx father of four. He's just been sentenced recently to 45 days in jail after an outrageous cover-up by the Westchester County District Attorney, Westchester County, New York judges, and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Mr. Fishman suffers from traumatic brain injury, tinnitus, related hearing impairment, cognitive occipital neuralgia, and post-concussive memory loss. He is not a well man, but he was denied the Americans with Disability accommodations in his case. And the cover-up here is really breathtaking. I've had an opportunity to talk to Mark Fishman, and I want to give him one more opportunity because he's been locked in a 7-year legal battle because he's been wronged, and I know how expensive that is. So, Mark, tell folks one more time how they can support you in this epic fight.
They can go to our website, NewRochellePoliceAbuse.com. Click on Help Out. There's a GoFundMe page and make a donation. It's really appreciated. Also, leave an email, comment, fill out some of our change.org surveys. I also encourage everyone to who's been persecuted, who's outraged, to contact the new Commission on Prosecutorial Conduct and complain if they've been abused or wrongfully convicted by a DA or if their family member was. That's cpc.ny.gov. Again, cpc.ny.gov. And if you've had police misconduct, you should contact the Attorney General's office and the Law Enforcement Misconduct Unit, established after the crime against Floyd to stop pattern discrimination, pattern abuse like we're suffering with Lane Schlesinger and Officer Sean Cocaine Kane in New Rochelle. It's systematic. A lot of people aren't aware that these new avenues are available. And, we need the disability parts in family court. Too many veterans and too many disabled people have no one to talk to in family court. These judges are not trained to accommodate. They're not trained to provide an auxiliary aid. They're just trained to rule against one party who they don't like. This isn't fairness. This isn't, a neutral arbitrator. This is personal vendettas. And I'd be remiss, Roger, if I wouldn't say that they're killing us. I have a friend by the name of Lizzie Harden Weinstein who died because Joyce Miller prosecuted her. Okay, for being a mom, not being able to see her kids. Okay, she had PTSD. I have another friend, Julia Goldmarks. They killed her. She couldn't see her kid 5 years, couldn't deal with it. Then we have Catherine Kasnoff, who went to Switzerland to commit suicide, assisted suicide because she couldn't take not seeing her two kids.
All right, Mark, we have to leave it there. I want to thank you for joining us in Stone Zone. God bless you, my friend. God bless you in your quest for justice.
Thank you for having us, Roger. Really appreciate it.
Netflix has a new monstrous story to tell. In 1950s Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived quietly on a decaying farm, hiding a house of horrors so gruesome it would redefine the American nightmare. Driven by isolation, psychosis, and an all-consuming obsession with his mother, he committed crimes that would haunt Hollywood for decades. The third and most harrowing installment of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's anthology series. Watch Monster, the Ed Gein story, October 3rd, only on Netflix.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You are re-entering the Stone Zone. Tonight, it's Roger Stone in the zone and on the phone as we take your calls at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. Also, you can email us your questions at askstone@stonezone.com. That's askstone@stonezone.com. We have an email question from Michael in Dallas, Texas, who asks me, what did you think of the elevator incident at the United Nations? where President Trump was frozen on the elevator for minutes. I think that this was, I thought this was an extraordinarily dangerous thing. I think it was a dry run, frankly, but it was only part of the entire overall UN experience. Let me read what the president said about it. He posted this on Truth Social. He said, "A real disgrace took place at the United Nations yesterday. Not one, not two, but three very sinister events. First, the escalator going up to the main speaking floor came to a screeching halt and stopped on a dime. It's amazing that Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of these steel steps face first. It was only that we were each holding the handrail tightly or it would have been a disaster. This was absolute sabotage, as noted by a day's earlier post in the London Times. It said UN workers actually joked about turning off the escalator. The people that did this should be arrested." Then the president said, "As I stood before a television crowd of millions of people all around the world, as well as important leaders in the hall, my teleprompter didn't work. It was stone cold dark. I immediately thought to myself, wow, first the elevator event and now a bad teleprompter. What kind of a place is this?" The president then goes on to say, "I then proceeded to make a speech without a teleprompter, which kicked in about 15 minutes later. The good news is the speech has gotten fantastic reviews. Maybe they appreciated the fact that very few people could have done what I did." And then thirdly, after making the speech, the president says, "I was told the sound was completely off in the auditorium where the speech was made, and that world leaders, unless they used their interpreters' earpieces, couldn't actually hear anything the president said." The first person the president saw at the conclusion of his speech was the First Lady, who was sitting right next to him. He asked her, "How did I do?" And she said, "I don't know. I couldn't hear a word you said." This was not a coincidence. This was a triple sabotage at the United Nations. They really should be ashamed of themselves. But more importantly, I think those in charge of the security and safety of our president need to do a much, much better job. I think this could have been a potential disaster with the president suspended there on the escalator ever since Butler, Pennsylvania, ever since West Palm Beach. I have feared for the life of our president, particularly since he's making these enormous changes in American policy, bringing America back, insisting on fairer trade deals with our trade partners, mounting the greatest deportation of dangerous illegal immigrants in U.S. history, working day and night for a cut in the interest rate so more people can buy homes, buy cars, pay off their credit card debt, pay off their student loans. This is a president who's standing up for the American people, but he's also on the cusp of justice against those in the deep state who tried to destroy his presidency, tried to send him to jail. So I think it is a very dangerous time in America. The brutal political assassination of my good friend Charlie Kirk proves that. I'm calling on the Secret Service to do a much, much better job. Let's go to the phones. Jason in Brooklyn, you have a question.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Stone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for having me on. I was just wondering, because you always throw in Tulsi Gabbard. And I know she's great, and you said that she's going to be our first woman president. But wasn't she just a Democrat?
I think it's a very good question, Jason. I thank you for it. Jason's in Brooklyn, by the way. Look, I think it's a mistake to look at American politics today as being divided between Republicans and Democrats. I think that's old thinking. Tulsi Gabbard didn't leave the Democrat Party so much as the Democrat Party left her. She is anti-war, for example. She was against the police state, the surveillance of Americans without warrants, in all honesty. She was against the mass-based censorship of free speech. She woke up one day and she realized that the Democrat Party, the old Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman, no longer represented her viewpoint. They are no longer pro-capitalism. They're no longer pro-free enterprise. They no longer believe in a strong national defense. They cheer on the abuses of the FBI against the American people. where parents were locked up for simply showing up at a school board meeting and expressing concern about the curriculum being forced on their children. So I think that Tulsi Gabbard is a person of enormous integrity. She is a great believer in the U.S. Constitution. Let's remember that we only know definitively that the entire Russian collusion narrative that we now are certain of, we know this only because she had the courage to follow the president's direction to declassify all of the documents that prove that there was a criminal cabal, that this was born in a meeting in the Oval Office with Barack Obama presiding. Joe Biden was there. National Security Advisor Susan Rice was there. FBI Director James Comey, a man who we read in the news today may be facing prosecution for his lies about this very event. CIA Director John Brennan was there. National Director of Intelligence General James Clapper was there. Only because of the courage and the precision of Tulsi Gabbard do we now know that there was, in fact, a cabal and the Russian collusion narrative is a total hoax. And now Tulsi Gabbard has turned her focus at the president's direction on the integrity of our elections and whether we can trust these electronic voting machines and exactly what happened in 2020 and therefore what's likely to happen in 2026. So I trust her. I think she's also a very, very dynamic communicator. I actually spoke to her on the phone today, and I stand by my prediction. She will be our first woman president. Maybe not in 2028, but she's young. She's only 43, and she has a very promising career. I have not been as impressed with a political figure, with a political communicator, since I worked for Ronald Reagan. That is how impressed I am with her. All right, Stephen, out in New Jersey, you've got a question.
Hey, Roger. Roger, my belief is that an American communist movement has succeeded in taking over the Democratic Party over the last 15, 20 years. It should be no surprise. That was the communism's goal, is to take over the world. We know that. You can go back 90 years to the FDR administration, a guy by the name of Alger Hiss. Here's my question. So if you agree with me, I guess that's the first question. Why is it that so few Republicans, other than, say, Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, and Ronald Reagan, have called this out and exposed this, and that they're in the Democratic Party? Why do you think that?
First of all, I agree with your underlying premise of your question. The Democrat Party has been taken over by a radical Marxist clique. But the truth is, globalism, let's be honest, infects both parties. Until Donald Trump came along to challenge them, the globalists, the internationalists, through organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, had successfully infiltrated all of our institutions, meaning our government, including the intelligence agencies, including the Pentagon and our military, including the national security apparatus, but also academia, our colleges, our public schools, as well as, of course, the think tanks, and then there's the funding for the defense contractors. So it takes enormous courage to stand up to these vested interests, and when you do stand up to them, like Donald Trump did, like General Michael Flynn did, like I did, they try to crush you. They try to crush you like a bug. They try to bankrupt you. They try to put you in jail. It was very interesting. I worked for Ronald Reagan in two campaigns: his 1980 campaign, where I handled New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and his 1984 reelection, where I handled those states, plus Ohio, Pennsylvania, and a group of New England states. And in 1988, James Baker, who was managing the campaign of George H.W. Bush, the sitting vice president, asked me to join that campaign. And I could have done so very easily. It would have made a lot of money, would have probably avoided a lot of controversy in my life, but I declined because George H.W. Bush was a globalist who did not reflect my views. So I supported Jack Kemp for president in 1988, and unfortunately he was not nominated. So I think you have to stand on principle. All the men you talked about, Joe McCarthy, who's been proven right. By the way, for those who want to continue to insist that McCarthy smeared all these innocent people, there's a great book called Blacklisted by History, by M. Stanton Evans. I highly recommend it to you. It proves to you without any doubt that Senator Joe McCarthy, who's been very much reviled as a drunkard, as a dangerous lunatic who smeared people, that entire narrative is just as phony as the Russian collusion narrative. And therefore, I think in retrospect, we realize that much of what McCarthy said was exactly right. And we see the results today. Our government has been infiltrated by communists, has been infiltrated by Marxists, which explains some of these wacky government positions they've taken. Thank you very much for your call. Let's go to the computer here. Here's an emailed question asking me whether I think that these media reports that FBI Director James Comey will be prosecuted. This is from Eric in Bedford Hills, New York. Well, Eric, I certainly hope so. It is very clear. Remember, they charged me specifically with lying under oath to Congress in my voluntary testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Now, first of all, who would remember? I wasn't responding to a subpoena, so I showed up voluntarily. Therefore, that's kind of proof that I had nothing to hide. And any misstatement that I did make was immaterial. In other words, there was no Russian collusion to cover up. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration between the Trump campaign or between me and the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks to cover up. So the entire question was a setup, and it is outrageous. When he was asked, James Comey specifically said that he had never directed anyone to leak negative information tying Donald Trump to Russian collusion, which completely was contradicted by the sworn testimony of the FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. He was very closely questioned by Senator Ted Cruz about this, and he lied. That's a material lie, and it's illegal, and it's perjury. He also had no memory of being told that the Clinton campaign had cooked up the entire Russian collusion hoax, and that the FBI would soon be essentially pushing that line. So there are two material lies. Now, as some people may know, Eric Siebert, the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, who had the authority to prosecute these crimes, was slow walking them. My sources tell me that he prepared a 51-page memo that would outline why Comey should not be prosecuted. Fortunately, he was fired by Donald Trump. He was replaced by a very sharp attorney who I happen to know, Lindsay Halligan, very capable, very sharp, very able, and she has until September 30th to charge James Comey. Now, there's a bunch of stories in the media today that indictment is coming. I hope that report is accurate, but we will see. Either we have a two-tier justice system in which liberal Democrats and those associated with the deep state can break the law with impunity and not be held accountable, or we have a one-tier justice system in which everyone is treated fairly and equally. I can tell you, in my own case, I was framed. General Mike Flynn was framed. They tried to frame Donald Trump. It failed. Now we will see. This is the big question. It's the question I'm asked more by Trump supporters than any other. Will anybody be held responsible for the 3-year charade of Russian collusion that we were subjected to? You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. We're taking your calls at 800-848-9222. Stay in the zone. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Tonight you've got Roger Stone in the zone and on the phone. We're going to go to the phones right now. That number, 800-848-9222. See if we can squeeze in a few more calls. Susan, you're in upstate New York. Welcome to the Stone Zone.
Roger, well, I've lived in New York City for 40 years, just escaped up here, but I want to know because I believe that Curtis it really has to focus on one of the most critical issues that is not being spoken about is that 70% of the New York City public school children cannot read at or above grade level or math or anything, and that 1/3 of them are actually so far below grade level that they're illiterate. We spend $40 billion a year in New York City on about 1.5 million children. Now, he, as mayor, would be in charge of the public schools. And he has not spoken about, how well charter schools do for minority children who are disproportionately affected by this, and how this also, when children do not learn, they end up, going into a life of crime often. So he's got to connect this. He needs 6 weeks left. People are focused on this. Their kids are back in school. And what about the curriculum that the teachers union controls? And what is he going to do? What is he going to do to correct this? He has not spoken about it, or if he has, barely. Not enough. What do you think?
I completely agree with you. Interestingly enough, in their debate in New Jersey, Jack Ciattarelli and Mikey Sherrill, Ciattarelli, I think, really scored in the debate by raising this very question about the curriculum being forced on the public schools in New Jersey. And, of course, the Democrat Party is completely controlled there by the teachers union, as it is in New York City. I was on the radio with Curtis the other morning, and somebody asked me how I felt about his red beret. I said, well, I'm not going to be the one to ask him to stop wearing it, but I'll say this. If he wins, I'll start wearing a red beret. How's that? All right, Susan, thank you so much for your question. Alex, in Long Island City, you've been waiting the longest. What do you got for us, Alex?
I'd like to hear what you think or know about the supposed Secret Service bust of the server systems surrounding New York City and the 100,000 SIM cards apparently to be used for some kind of sabotage of our telecom system. Anything you can illuminate for us?
I appreciate you bringing that up. I spoke about it on the Stone Zone only yesterday. To me, it is chilling because it just shows you how easy it would be for a total blackout of all mass communications. And therefore, I hope the Secret Service, well, I've had some real questions with post-Butler, and frankly, I'm concerned about what happened in the United Nations, where the president and the first lady were, for a few minutes, sitting ducks, had there, God forbid, been an assassin in the hall. Obviously, when you go to the United Nations, that's not friendly territory for Donald Trump. And then he had to give an extemporaneous speech because his teleprompter didn't work. But I don't really worry about that because Donald Trump is never at a loss of something to say. I say that after being his friend of 50 years. I don't really know more than has been reported, but like you, I'm curious as to who was behind this. Was it the Communist Chinese? Was it Antifa, which has now been declared a violent terrorist organization? People really do need to know. I'm going to do a little research on your question and follow up, but I appreciate your calling. All right, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody who called in or emailed us today. You had Roger Stone in the zone and on the phone. I also want to thank Mark Fishman, the embattled father of four, who is fighting for his rights, for joining us. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
This Sunday is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run, and our team is in need of your support. Right now, every dollar counts. The WABC hosts must all rally their loyal audience to participate. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk and help your favorite hosts right here at WABC and support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk. Help WABC raise money for the amazing Tunnel to Towers Foundation Walk Run. Go to WABCRadio.com/walk.